Well, hello there, and welcome to Stockholm World Water Week. We are at a talk show right now that is called the Water Couch in Conversation, where we're going to talk about the value of water today. So, as everyone in this conference is aware, we are looking at the ways we attempt to keep water safe, clean, and healthy around the globe. And even though water is thought of as a human right, everybody here realizes water, healthy water, is actually a very big business. And I wanted to actually talk numbers for a second to really, because numbers are very definitive, and it would help clarify what I mean by value. So sometimes cost and value are the same thing, sometimes they're very different. So the cost today of crude oil is $64 to $68 a barrel. The cost of spot gold is $3,373 a troy ounce. The cost of water, on the other hand, is not fixed globally. It varies significantly between, I'm going to talk in US dollars here, obviously for this part, 11 cents a cubic meter to $8 a cubic meter, depending on where you are in the world. So the developing countries have closer to 11 cents. Can anyone guess where the $8 is? It's European, and it's the country of Denmark, by the way. Most expensive water. So this is interesting that it's so inexpensive for the one thing we really can't live without: gold, oil, water. Let's talk about bottled water for 1 second. Bottled water, these brands invest so much in marketing, packaging, and branding that the least expensive item in that bottle is water. So you take that same cubic meter of water that you pay for out of your tap, that in Europe is roughly about €3. I'm going to switch to euros now. If you were to buy that cubic meter of water in a brand, you're going to spend €1,000 for that same amount of water. So this is what I mean by valuation difference when I talk about the value of this. So now let's just chat I was curious what ChatGPT might say. So last night I went to ChatGPT, which I do not use, and I said, ChatGPT, what is the value of water? And this is what it said to me. That is a deep and important question. The value of water goes far beyond its market price, Chase. And then it showed me this graph, which I want to show you here. This is what ChatGPT. So I want to also point this out because I think this shows that no one on this stage is going to suffer from AI anytime soon if this is how they look at the value of water on ChatGPT. So now I want to go to our esteemed panelists. We have Dr. Mark Fletcher, who is Global Water Business Leader for Arup and also former British Water Chair. We've got Professor Prosan Bhattacharya from KTH Royal Institute of Technology, who is a professor of groundwater chemistry. And we've got Jixian Hu, who is a newest to the water sector, also was a former master's student at KTH and a student, ironically, of Dr. Bhattacharya, and you are with Sweco, and you are a water and sanitation consultant.
Yes.
So we have different perspectives from different industries here. Mark, you first. I would like to know, how is the value of water introduced at the start of a program you're working on, and how do you look at that and measure ROI, return on investment?
So I ran a 3-year program at MIT Sloan on resilience of urban systems, and we thought the best way to start this was to, rather than talk about water as an abstract substance, to remind people that we're all about 65% water. Mm-hmm. Water's essential for life, and the value of water increases exponentially as we have less and less of it.
Yes.
Because it's essential for us. So that's how I start to think. We introduce economic frameworks, things like a multiple capitals approach, sort of social capital and natural capital and economic capital, various capitals. We have something called a total value framework. And then by the time I've introduced those, I find everybody's sort of switched off a little bit. And they're saying, well, I'm not sure what that really means because I'm not an economist. So I said, well, think about it like this. You live in a house by a river. Now that river is polluted. It's been polluted since industrial times. There's no biological value. Your house backs onto the river, and your land value reduces because you're next to a polluted river. Right? Mm-hmm. So we make our investment, guys, we and girls. Let's invest in this treatment works upstream. Let's improve the quality of our water, and let's improve the quality of the discharge so that people can drink fresh water, so they get access to fresh water, and we have an unpolluted river. Now, that river now shifts from our land value being lower than the rest of the area because we're next to a polluted river to being next to a clean river. So the land value is greater than the area and people want to live next to the river. Now, if that then has some species like a salmon or a kingfisher or an otter, we call those totemic species, they sort of have more value than they should because people associate them with clean water. Then we can say that sort of the biodiversity and the water quality have contributed to a significant uplift in the value of our house. Imagine that as a ribbon going all the way through the community,
Yeah.
and then think, and we recover tax from that. So it's one way in which you can think about how improving the quality of water then is directly connected to improvements in the value of water, but also the amenity and recreation. People can swim in it, they can fish in it, they can kayak in it, things that they don't do in dirty water.
Yeah.
Now, if you took all of those separate plants, like I've described, and put them all together into a big program, you put that all together, you add up what it all costs, you divide it by the number of households, and that's how much everybody gets as a bill.
Okay.
So that's one way of people saying that's how I see the value of what I pay for in my bill and how that comes back to me in things that I do in my daily life.
Yeah. But
Does
I also think people want to see improvement in water before they're willing to pay for it.
I agree.
Period.
One of the things is water's one of those things, clean water's one of those things that once you've had it, you take for granted.
Absolutely.
You don't see the pipes, you don't see the benefits. However, the discharge from our sewage treatment works, even the discharge from our industrial processes, if you like, they go into our rivers. And people don't want to see dead fish, they don't want to see dying fish, they don't want to see a lack of biodiversity. They want to see things that are thriving. So therefore, I think if you can connect this outcome, this positive impact, this benefit to people, then I think you'll find they're willing to pay for it.
Yeah.
If anything, I would say we don't pay enough for our water and haven't paid enough for it for too long. We've
So
taken
true.
it for granted. Yet I thought it was a brilliant introduction where you talked about this crazy over-marketed and hyped bottled water,
Yeah.
and how we seem to pay for that because we've been conned.
Yeah.
Yet the water quality in most of Europe is fantastic. And in UK is some of the
Yeah.
best in the world. I will drop that one in as a
No,
little bit
of course, it's the
ting,
UK's best in the
ka-ching.
world.
Yes.
Some people argue France, or Sweden. Now that we're
the-
here, people think the Swedish water is the best, which of course they're all fantastic. So, but Professor Bhattacharya, let me come to you next. You have had a background in India that I find really fascinating because you started in Delhi, and you mentioned to me on a phone call. And by the way, you've worked in groundwater, so you're very familiar with this topic. That when you were in Delhi 30 years ago, you drank the tap water. And now today you go back and you wouldn't touch it. And that perhaps that is because the utility is not putting as much effort into cleaning it as much because everyone drinks bottled water there. Is that possible? Because it's the one country that I find has the least safe for being as rising as it is, the water is still fairly questionable.
Exactly, because partly if I see today, I mean, staying here you say that I'm staying here in 30 years and getting exposed to the Swedish tap water from the Stockholm Vatten. So
Yeah.
that makes a lot of difference. That's where quality ensured water in the tap. The piped water supplies, which are the piping infrastructure, they are relatively always well maintained. But on the contrary, in India, for example, now when we talk about these the differences, what we see in 30 years period, so main question comes: where are we actually the regulators? Number one, the management of the regulatory framework which is operating, are they really efficient? Are they looking on the water safety parameters to an optimal extent, so that if there is any gap in these things, because that is again coming up to the drinking water safety planning structure, where you have them. If I just reflect back on a drinking water safety chain, it's source water quality. Then you have the treat. If it's so you are not complying with the source water quality, then you need to introduce a treatment, and
Yeah.
then from the treatment you get a zero contaminant water, maybe microbial, chemical, or any sort of contaminants.
Yeah.
And then you get into the distribution network. Now, when a treated water gets into a distribution network which is actually not up to the standard, which in itself in the pipelines, you have a lot of sediment precipitates inside. So they get recontaminated before it reaches
Right.
the consumer tap. So this is a whole chain. It's not one specific item. So likewise, I mean,
Yeah.
even if I see, I mean, I was in North Carolina in the GSA. So in North Carolina, so there
In
you
the
feel
U.S., in
in the
North Carolina, in
US,
the U.S.,
so
yeah.
they have this lead contamination, and there are microbial many this chemical cells which are created within the water pipes, lead, copper. The pairs of chemical ions which actually interact with each other. So
Yeah.
the lead is actually coming into the water pipes. I think even in London, it has been one of the major questions when you had a major lead pipes in UK. The
Well,
major
I think
accident.
that's one of the biggest challenges
Yeah,
facing the industry today is
yeah,
the infrastructure upgrades
yeah.
who's going to pay for it? The public. You have to get them to buy in because it's going to be a cost to everybody.
Actually, there was a drinking water investigation by the Swedish government starting 2013, and the report came in 2016. There, one of the strongest point which is focused here was about this drinking water need for this infrastructure replenishments, because since I think if I remember correctly, the 35% of the Swedish I mean, Stockholm, the overall water infrastructure needs replenishment.
35% is the
35,
number?
yeah,
Yeah.
and even to that, but even water leakage and other things which bring in different sorts of contaminants, like microbial is one of the important factors.
Right.
So there is a still lot of improvements going on, and many things since 2016 we are in progress. The Stockholm water is
Yeah.
really working, and then the climate change. Has also
Yeah.
introduced like
It's a
increased
lot.
natural organic matter in
Mm-hmm.
water. Then these are really getting another set of new troubles, because disinfection byproducts and DBPs, they are also equally carcinogenic. So you get, I mean, there are so many new problems which you have to tackle, and on
It's,
top of that we have PFAS and
I know.
other plastics and other things.
It's true. We have well, it's just that you have emerging contaminants as you're
Yeah,
solving the problems of yesterday. Then you
yeah,
have the problems of today,
yeah,
and you're anticipating the problems of tomorrow. Utilities have a hard job because it's so
yeah.
decentralized, it's so localized, and it's a constant. How do we deal with infrastructure upgrades, all the pipes that need to change around the globe, and how do we deal with contaminants? So it's a big job, and I think everybody does the the best they
And
can,
that needs
maybe.
a huge investment.
Yeah. So, Jessian, you work at Sweco,
Yes.
and you're literally in modeling and really sanitation, which I think, let's talk about the value of the water. Sanitation needs to be on the table as a topic of water because it really, as we have more scarcity, they go hand in hand. It's almost a figure eight. Sanitation and water are really sort of the same thing at this point, especially as we get into topics about reuse and how much more that needs to be built into projects. So, for you, what is your? I want to read something that you wrote, and I know that I'm haunted you with this quote. So here is what you wrote with your thesis. She says, more often than not, the technology is not the core of solving the problem, but people and society. I feel I need more knowledge on the social science side to help me understand the issues and better use the technical skills I have obtained. Talk to me about that now that
So
you're
I
working.
I wrote that sentence like 4 or 5 years ago when I came to Sweden. I came with a question. I came to study, and I was in search for some sort of answer to that question. Because, I wrote that question when I read about how people reinforcing riverbanks and build levee, which actually increase the damage if there's gonna be a flooding event. Then I read about, PFAS is so bad, but we just continue using it. And I was thinking, why? Why we're not stopping that? And now I directly work with reducing overflow from wastewater system to stormwater system or to lakes and surface water. And there's a lot of things that can be done to reduce that, so that people won't need to swim next to this wastewater outlet into the lake where there's a lot of E. coli and so on. Why is that not done? Why is there not enough willingness to invest and to look into the problem? So that was my motive of writing that sentence.
And so 4 years later, tell us what you've learned.
I'm still learning. I can only say I'm here to listen and to learn.
Okay, so we're still learning on that. So I guess another question I have on value systems is let's talk about private investment and public government investment. Like where Where's the solution? I know that's a combination these days. You have a lot of both going on, but who really brings bigger innovation and action? Is it private money coming in, or is it public government money? Or is it the perfect combination? Mark, do you have a comment on that?
I do, but maybe a contrast because I've just been to Australia where it's run as the whole water sector is run public, and the real deep depth of my experience is since privatisation in the UK. And we're currently in the UK. We've kept our bills too low for the last 15 years. We've underinvested, and we're currently spending about, let's call it £100 billion in the next 5 years. And then on top of that, with climate change to improve water security, about another £50 billion over the next 10 years.
Okay.
So, and you could say, well, that's private water companies. Yeah, it's private water companies, but they're charging people. People are paying through their bill. And people don't realise that whether you pay through a bill to a utility that's private or through your rates publicly to the government, you're still sort of paying the money and it's still going to the end solution. So we can get a little bit confused by the public and private bit. In reality, if we need lots of money and we've got to, because we're putting a major investment in over maybe 20 years, we call it PFI. We might say we've got a private finance initiative. But basically what we're doing, we're borrowing some money over a period of time and paying it back. Well, the schemes that we're putting in the UK, they'll be, the investment will be spread over a period of time and it'll be paid back.
Okay.
So whether it's public or private, as far as I'm concerned, there's a big issue, and that is if it's public, it competes with education and other things. And at the moment, the way our politics is, water, it may be a priority, but it may be deprioritised to other things. At least by making that decision, you might lose votes. At least when it's privatised, you can blame the utility.
Right.
And your government can carry on regardless, worrying about health and all the other things.
You know, it's true, but so what I'll do when I'm visiting a new city is I'll get in a taxi or an Uber or a Grab, and I talk about water with the driver. And then when I was in the UK last, the guy starts complaining to me about that he's got to pay for a pipe in his building and why would I do that? And I said to him, is that not worth it to pay for the pipe into the building to get clean, healthy water every day? And he didn't think it was his responsibility. That is the issue of why we talk about the value. How does everyone at this conference understands the value of water, but how do we understand as individuals how the masses, how do you educate them to create value in their eyes? That's the question today, I think, that you bring up working in the water sector as well. And when you go to specific places in the global south, I spoke at a conference with a woman who was part of a charity in Uganda, and she heads up this charity. And we spoke both side by side in an event. And I was talking about how we don't take things for granted. Here's how we use water and we waste it. And it was water parks and slides and all the things we do with water in our life. That was in the United States, a lot of these pictures. She said, and they have a school. She's spent money, they've raised money to put clean drinking water through wells, and they have a school that they put in. And she said, if my children, she considers all of the students her children, saw how you wasted water, they would be in shock. And it would be, she said, our birth rates are so high because families here kind of expect that they're going to lose a child to a waterborne illness during their lifetime. She said, it is life and death to us, water. It is black and white. We do not take it lightly. And that to me, like when you think about that reality, like you're going to give birth to children and have a family and you think you might lose one because of all the waterborne illness. Like that's a shocking difference between how we wake up and you turn on the tap and you're brushing your teeth and you're in the shower and you're out the door and you're pouring water bottle. And
so where you have treated water and where you've had it for a period of time, you take for granted the health benefit. But when it was first introduced in Victorian times, the Victorian sanitation engineers and water engineers at the time were the rock stars. They were the AC/DC of because they transformed the mortality rate for children, for people, due to water-related diseases dramatically. More than any hospitals have ever achieved.
No kidding.
It's that dramatic. So
Interesting.
when we talk about that value, that is sunk value that has been taken for granted by generations, where you've had the privilege of treated water, where in so much of the world you don't have that privilege. So you would really value having treated water that you could rely on, so that health disbenefit, that health burden that you have to carry through your life is removed.
Got it.
And you'd
Okay.
think that would be a priority before we go to war or do anything else, wouldn't you?
If only.
But this
If
is
only. But so I want to go around because we're kind of running out of time for our online session of this. And I want to just ask everybody here. So, Prosan, for you specifically, do you believe that the introduction of bottled water has changed all the available tap water? Like that the government.
I think I mean that has definitely made a difference. Not only bottled water, even when you see the different filters, which are I know a generic structure within any new construction. Specifically, we talk about in India, in any new constructed building, you have a water filter which is assembled, which is the RO filter.
Yeah.
Right, so that is the inherent part. Second part is that when we talk about this, I mean, when you talked about this health issues, right? I mean, the cost of treatment for an ill person, which one is what is the cost benefit analysis of
Yeah.
a treated water versus cost for treating a person, especially the social insurance
It's
factor. So there's a quite
it's
complex. We can discuss
It's very
more.
complex, and we'll
Yeah,
continue after the
yeah.
time. And just really quickly before we have to close out, what would your take be on tap water versus bottled water? The introduction of like kind of a very high valued perceived water to something that's probably very clean, especially in Sweden. What's your take on that working in
I
this
think
sector?
it really depends on the water supply where you live. In my experience from China, sometimes we have water shortage and there's water cut and there will be warnings. There will be water cut for 2 days. So you need to be prepared for them. My parents would have those, gigantic buckets of water, or like fill the bathtub with water, or buy some bottled water for
Right.
drinking. So you use that as a necessity.
So you wouldn't
Well,
have water for 2 days, and you would have to have saved it and use the water
Yes.
you're saved. So that
yes,
and
you
that,
really calculate every single drop you use.
that's incredible for how you value water, correct?
Yeah, then you also see like exactly how much water you're using
Right.
through the meter in your apartment.
Unbelievable.
So
See, that's
now-
brilliant. Maybe we need more of that so we're accountable for quantity. We're going to sign out of the online version. Thank you so much for watching. We're going to continue with everybody here, open up for questions. Thank you for joining us for the Water Couch as we go on about the value of water. This is kind of an endless topic.